Hey everyone, good afternoon. Hi. Had a little bit of technical difficulty this afternoon. One of my screens was not behaving. Of course, for me, it's always about the work, and we're here today to do that. Welcome to Sewing Shortcut Sunday. I am Nina. I will be your sew guide for the next let's say next few years of you learning how to sew as a beginner. And we are Royal Fulani Living Sew School. We are on YouTube. We are also a lifestyle and fashion brand called Royal Fulani Living that is basically inspired by my life, my bicultural life as an American and Senegalese designer, artist, creative. And we basically create our own original West African prints and we apply them to everyday products. But this is my passion project. Every Sunday or Saturday, we will be here for Sewing Shortcut Saturday or Sunday. And we will tackle a beginner sewing technique. And I want you all to absolutely positively as we move forward, send me messages, DM me, comment about the things that you would like to learn as a beginner sewer, a basic beginner sewer. I have a experience in the fashion industry 30 plus years. I have experience as a fashion educator in secondary and post-secondary educational environments for the past 20 plus years. So I am here to serve you. I am here to help you. Royal Fulani Living Sew School is primarily building the community and confidence of the neurodiverse, newbie, and non-sewer, one creative at a time. We have been focusing the past few weeks on fastenings and closures. And as you can see, we are ready to get started. I have you all on our workspace screen. And of course, my face screen was not working today, but one monkey don't stop no show. So I want to make sure that we're getting down to what you all came here for and what this passion project that I feel in my heart and my soul that is desperately needed for beginner sewers, because I feel like as experts in this sewing arena, in this sewing tutorial space, YouTube, all of the platforms that we are on, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Pinterest, Threads, we need to roll it back and dial it back a little bit. And we need not jump so quickly into sewing a garment. Yes, is it exciting to sew a garment? Yes, is it exciting to be a beginner and be excited about sewing your first garment? Yes, but because I am teaching you based upon industry standards, which is the way that I learned, which is where my experiences come from, I want to teach you the basic and fundamentals of sewing through the practice of sewing samples and examples first before you apply it to an actual garment. The worst thing you can do as a beginner sewer is not fully understand a technique that you're supposed to apply to your professional garment that you want to look good, that you want to wear, that you're making for someone else, and you make a mistake that you cannot repair, that you cannot fix, based off of something, a technique that you probably should have practiced before you actually applied it to a garment. So we here say practice makes progress. And before we apply any sewing technique, any specific technique to any garment, we practice it in a sample or prototype first. Last week, as you all remember, those of you who were here or if you saw us on replay, we actually did our first fastening in our fastening series, or you can call it closure, and we did a centered zipper application, which you can see all done. We did this in about 45 minutes. Just to let you all know, our channel is specifically geared towards those with learning differences. I myself have a learning difference, undiagnosed, several learning differences that I've just learned to work through as time went on, and as I went through academically and the design industry. I just learned how to put techniques in place to help me, being someone with learning differences that was not diagnosed. But those of us who are diagnosed and undiagnosed, sometimes we just need to learn a little bit differently. And everything that I teach, the method that I apply in the Royal Fulani Living Sew School, is called a chunking method. So we basically break things down into bits and pieces so that we can creatively digest them better and understand them better step by step. So we have our live tutorials every Sunday. based upon one specific technique. Then we have our pre-recorded tutorials, which are, of course, available on our Royal Fulani Living Soul School channel on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. We're on all of them. And of course, we have our static posts, or what we call carousel posts, which give you image and the written steps, directions to how to do that specific technique. So let's jump right in. So today we are doing a lap zipper application. And what is a lap zipper application? It is another way for you to, I always give it basically, open and close a garment so that you can get into it, and you can do it through various fastenings, various closures, zippers, buttons, snaps. And we've done snaps, and we've done the center zipper application. But with zippers, there's a variety of zipper applications that you can use that are for specific garments. So 9 times out of 10, where you'll find a lap zipper application is on the left side of a pair of pants, a skirt, a pair of shorts, something that you need to get into, but something where you don't want the zipper itself to be seen. You want to sort of hide the zipper. So with my center zipper application, if I open and close this, I can pretty much see the zipper teeth, and I can see the tape, and I can see my pull. With the lap zipper application, none of this will be seen at all. It'll basically be hidden behind a flap, or hidden behind what we call a lapped, the fabric will be lapped so that it will cover the exposed zipper. And it's just a more professional way for you to execute a zipper, and something that I always say is what we call better sportswear. So like your skirt that you wear to work, your basic pencil skirt, or your basic pleated skirt, or a circle skirt. It's a execution that takes up your closure one notch, I would say. But we did our center zipper application. Let's get to our lap zipper application. I'm going to move these wires out of the way. And as you can see, we're in our workspace. We have our handy dandy muslin, as we always do. And we want to start with our muslin. And for those of you who are just joining us for the very first time today, welcome, 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 welcome to everyone. Even if you're watching us on replay, which I notice a lot of you do, we are Royal Fulani Living Soul School. We welcome you. We are here to help. Once again, if you have things that you would like to see, basic fundamental things that you may not still understand, please don't be embarrassed. Please don't be ashamed to ask. And send me DMs, comments, whatever you need to do to get to me. I will absolutely answer you individually. So muslin basically is an inexpensive cotton fabric that we use to create prototypes. And those prototypes, 9 times out of 10, the fabric, the final fabric that we're using is a woven cotton or some form of a woven fabric. And so as you can see, basic cotton, it's really inexpensive. It comes bleached, it comes unbleached, it comes in a variety of different ways, but it's an inexpensive fabric that we use to execute prototypes, and I use them specifically to do samples. What I want to do is take my see-through ruler, and once again, we have a full out tutorial on our YouTube channel about basic beginner sewing supplies. Basic beginner sewing supplies. It comes in 4 parts. All of them are available pre-recorded on our YouTube channel. You can look at them, and our see-through ruler is one of those supplies. So what I want to do is find the 4-inch mark on my see-through ruler, and as you guys can see there, I want to make sure I'm getting it in the camera. Finding my 4-inch mark. I want to take that 4-inch marking here, and I want to lay that on the raw edge of my muslin, and I want the measure over along my selvage. Remember, we talked about our selvage is like gold. We don't want to get rid of our selvage. Now, what I always say each week is when you're cutting your fabric, okay, you never want to, a true woven, you never want to, that's not the way you want to do it. You want to snip and rip your yardage, snip and rip samples, snip and rip pieces of this woven, 100% woven fabric, whatever you need, snip and rip it. So I'm snipping and ripping into the portion that I need, my 4-inch panel, ripping. And as you can see, it beautifully and cleanly rips all the way up and all the way down. I have what I need. My bolt is still intact. I haven't taken off more fabric than what I need or less fabric than what I need. My woven fabric is perfect. So I'm going to take my 4-inch panel, and now I need 2 4 by 10 inch panels. And you see me do this each week, just snip and rip your 4-inch panel. I want to take my selvages, which are the bound finish edge of your fabric, which are extremely expensive, extremely important, and you don't want to get rid of them and you don't want to cut them off. And even those of you who are buying fabric from the fabric store for the first time, if you see the person who's selling you the fabric or cutting your yardage, cutting along the selvage, stop them and ask them to properly cut your fabric. It's okay, because you need this selvage as a reference point to lay out your patterns, cut, sew, the way it fits on the body. Your selvage is a reference point that we extremely we really don't need anyone to mess with. So we need that to be intact in order for us to sew properly, pattern make properly, cut properly, and fit properly the garment once it's done. So what I want to do is line up my selvages. I'm just going to take one straight pin. Once again, one of our supplies, our magnetic pin cushion or pin wand, and run a pin through my selvage just to keep them together. And I want to smooth this out. Just smooth it out. Okay, remember, we're practicing. Practice makes progress. Don't jump right into a garment right away, especially as a beginner. Build your confidence in the sewing techniques first, and then you'll feel confident enough to make an actual garment. Now what I want to do is find the 10-inch mark on my ruler, my sequin ruler. My 10-inch mark is there. I want to lay that on my selvage, align that with my selvage, and I want to make a small mark here along that line of the ruler. And then I want to just line this up as best as I can. I'm making a sample. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Practice makes progress, not perfect. And I want to draw a line, and I'm going to cut these so I can have 2 panels, 4 by 10-inch muslin panels. Okay. I keep this for later. I'll use this for something else. So don't get rid of it. Okay. Have my 2 panels. And once again, here's my magnetic pin cushion. Drop those right on there. And I've got my 2 panels ready to go. Okay. That's what I need. Now what I want to do is I want to execute a 1-inch seam allowance. I want to sew these 2 panels together, make a seam, and I want my seam allowance to be 1-inch seam allowance. Let's flip our screen to our machine, as you all can see. And I want to line up the raw edges of my seam allowance. Okay. Line up the raw edges of my seam allowance. And what I always say each week is, if you want to use a pin or pins to align the raw edges of your seam allowance, so that they don't slip away from each other while you're sewing, that's perfectly fine. Take your pin, make sure the thinner part, and I don't want to get too close so you can see, make sure that the pin or the pointed part is going in and towards the raw edges, because that's the part that you want to run under the machine needle, and you don't want the machine needle to break or hit that while you're sewing. So if it hits that, 9 times out of 10, it will either like bend or distort your needle and you'll need to change it, or it'll break your needle. So you don't want either one of those. And this is the thicker part of the pin, so you want to keep that out of the way of the needle. So what I want to do is insert this into my machine, and just making sure my threads are together. There we go. Okay. So I have just making sure my bobbin thread was on top of the machine. So I have both my threads. I want to make sure my threads are going to the back of the machine, between the foot and the back of the machine. Take my sample, line up my raw edges, find my 1-inch seam allowance guide on my machine. There it is. What I always mention each week is at the very beginning, like when I was in design school, very early on, I'm not going to tell you guys what year, there were no left markings. There were only right markings because predominantly people were right-handed. So I'm so excited to see that now things are being catered towards righties and lefties. So if you're a lefty, then the raw edge of your seam allowance will be on this side, and you would find your 1-inch seam allowance guide on this side. I'm right-handed. My 1 inch seam allowance guide is on this side. I also put tape and markings because I'm getting older and my eyes are not that great. So I actually make the markings on there on top of tape. I don't draw them directly onto the machine because what if you want to, resell the machine? You don't want to have permanent markings on the machine. So line up my raw edges of my sample with the 1 inch seam allowance guide, lower my foot, and I don't need the pin, so you'll see as I start to sew and I back stitch, I'll take my pin out. So here, all right, back stitch a little forward. And I'll just take this guy out, drop him right back on my magnetic pin line. Raw edges of my seam allowances laying directly on top of each other. I want the raw edge of my seam allowance to line up with my 1 inch seam allowance guide that is on my machine. Keep your raw edges, don't let your raw edges do this. Don't let them separate. Keep them right on top of each other. Stitch, make your seam 1 inch seam allowance going all the way down. And fast sewing does not mean accurate sewing. Take your time. Okay, you will get faster over time as you become intermediate and advanced, but for right now, as a beginner, take your time. You'll love your results better if you take your time and don't worry about speed. Okay. And sometimes that's the thing for those of us who have learning differences when we're in a classroom setting that doesn't necessarily cater to us, and I'm speaking specifically of creatives. Something may be taught and everybody else is moving forward and we still don't understand something. So we work a little bit slower. And I love that about myself. I take my time and my work is always done in excellence. And I don't have a problem taking things out, seam ripping something if I've done it wrong. Okay. 1 inch seam allowance is completed. Lift the foot of your machine, pull your sample out to the left. Okay. Remember we talked about this, fabric scissors or nippers, fabric nippers. I keep those around somewhere. I don't seem to be able to find them. Give yourself a lead. Don't cut your thread to the quick. Make sure you go out a couple inches and then leave yourself a tail to be able to go back and start to sew again. Let's go to our workspace. Okay. What do we need now? So here's my portable ironing board. Okay, I love this. My family hates it. I really like it. It's small. I even use it in my personal use. I really love this little thing. I can pop it out, iron tablecloths, a quick shirt in the morning, something I need done right away. I don't have to worry about pulling out the large ironing board just to set it up. This, I pull it out very quickly. It folds up. It's portable. A couple different places have them. I actually got this off of Amazon, but IKEA has a really cute one that's really inexpensive. You could try there. So here we are on our portable ironing table. What I want to do always, clean up my threads first. Get rid of all this stuff first. You don't want to clean at the end. Clean while you're working, okay? Accurate pressing is equally as important as accurate sewing. I'm grabbing my iron, okay? And she's off right now. She's on safety. So I'm making sure that I'm on my steam setting. So if you look there, I'm on a cotton steam setting. Cotton loves steam, especially my muslin. Like my muslin presses so beautifully with a steam iron. As far as brands, what do I recommend? Whatever you can afford, whatever works, whatever makes steam. All irons are pretty consistently the same. There are some that are on another level, but I feel like because of what you're doing, starting with the basics, get something inexpensive, something that just works, something that absolutely creates steam and has a steam setting. So first things first, I want to turn my sample up facing me, okay? Up and facing me. I want to take my fingers. I want to first open up my seam allowance with my fingers. Then I want to take my iron and I want to press my seam allowance flat and open. Give it a little steam. Okay. Not only do I want to press the interior, I want to press the exterior, which will represent the outside of your garment if you are making one. There. And again, the other side. Okay. All right. Now, here's where we get started. Now, I showed you all these last week. all of my beautiful zippers. I don't even remember where I got these. These are what I teach with. So my students get these each one, and they practice as many times as they need to. I must have 100 of them. Pick one, any one. Okay, so I'll pick the beige. Now remember the anatomy of our zipper. Okay, we have our zipper pull. Okay, which is what allows us to open and close our zipper. We have our zipper tape, which are these two portions of fabric which sit alongside the zipper teeth, which are the pieces or the metal portion that allows you to open and close the zipper, and it runs along this part of the zipper, which are the teeth. And then we have our zipper stop. Okay. So we have tape, teeth, stop, pull. Okay. And there's also a stop on top. So know the anatomy of whatever it is you're using, because sometimes when you read directions and they're like, apply this, your zipper tape face down, you're like, what? Like, make sure the teeth are facing up. If you don't understand the anatomy of what it is that you're using, you might get confused. So what I want to do is I want to lay my zipper flat onto my seam allowance. Lay it flat and align it with my seam allowance. So I'm basically aligning this so that it sits right on my seam. Okay, you can't feel it right now, but we're going to pin it in place and make sure that we're doing it accurately. Okay, so I even sometimes open it and work from right to left, or work from either seam allowance. Okay, so what I want to do is either seam allowance. It doesn't make a difference because we're practicing. Now, normally what you would do is if this was a lap zipper and it was in a skirt, your lap would be facing to the back. So your lap would be facing to the back. So you would actually almost like put your hand along your side seam of your body to where the zipper is, and you would insert your hand in the lap, and you would zip and unzip the garment. Okay, so your lap will be facing to the back. So what I want to do is take my zipper tape, line up my zipper tape with one of my seam allowances. I want to grab that seam allowance. I want that seam allowance to stay to the right. Everything else goes to the left. Okay, so let's do that again. So here we go. Okay, face down. I want to grab one of the zipper tapes, grab one of my seam allowances. That seam allowance stays to the right. Everything else goes to the left. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to fold. I'm going to make like a small pleat here, right next to my seam allowance, right next to my zipper tape. Okay. Now the way that I could do this and understand it, I'm going to give you guys a measurement. Okay. So I'm going to take my ruler because we're beginners. I'm going to know this is 1 inch. I'm going to measure in about 3/4 of an inch. Okay, and I'm going to just give myself a guideline. That's why I love the idea of practicing something in an inexpensive fabric first, so that I could get it and understand it. Okay, so make my line to 3/4 of an inch away from my seam. Well, it's about 1/4 of an inch away from my seam, but it's 3/4 of an inch from the raw edge of my seam allowance. And I want to make sure, actually, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. This is 5/8, so I'm doing 5/8. 3/4 is too much. So 5/8. And here, and just make a marking, because I want to know where I'm going to be folding. Okay, I could do it randomly and just basically figure it out, but because I want you all to have a reference, I'm going to make a fold. Okay, and what I want to do is I'm going to fold and press this in place first. Okay. So I want to, my iron, I love working with the iron as I go along, because my iron basically allows me to have a reference. Okay. So what I want to do is press this in place right on the line. Use your steam. Okay. Press that in place right on the line. using my steam. Press it out, okay? And then, and it's just the seam allowance, just the seam allowance. Then what I want to do is take my zipper and align my zipper with that fold. So you see that? So the top of my zipper tape is touching the top of my sample. I'm lining it up, and I want to pin this in place. And what I always like to do is pin things and then manually see if they're working, manually see if it's right before I actually stitch it down. Okay, so I'm lining this up, and as you can see, the folded edge is right along the zipper teeth. Okay, folded edge is right along my zipper teeth. So there, and you keep going down and pin, and see how much easier it is when your fold is pressed in place. There's no guesswork. Am I folding it under too much? Am I folding it under too little? There's none of that. Okay, there's none of that. So once again, this is a zipper application, lapped zipper application that you can use in skirts. You can use it in a pair of pants. A lot of times you'll see this more in like if those of you who work in corporate environments, your slacks, your work pants, J. Crew, Banana Republic, Zara, like pick one, anyone, pick a brand, any brand. They all pretty much make consistently the same thing. Okay. So then what I want to do is a lot of times I'll pin things, zip it up, and I want to get the gist of whether or not I'm in the right place, and I am. Okay. So I'll go back and I'm correct. Okay. So basically, make your marking. Your marking was 5/8 of an inch away from your raw edge of your seam allowance. Made a mark with my pencil, folded that mark, pressed it. Okay. Now I want to go to my machine. Now I can leave this open. Okay. So I'm gonna switch you all to the machine. Okay. Remember last week we introduced our zipper foot. Okay. There we are. That's what that little drawer is for. For those of you who may be wondering, this is the Singer Heavy Duty Series 4411. It is a machine that I highly recommend for beginners. Any machine from the Singer Heavy Duty Series is good. These machines, I, as an educator, have used them for 2 decades. It is the machine that I prefer for beginners. It is a machine that is easy to use, easy to understand, fundamentals. And as you go along, intermediate and advanced, you will build your arsenal of machines. So your machines, your what I like to call your toolbox of machines will increase, and you'll keep this machine, but you'll use it for certain things, and then you'll use your more advanced machines for other things. But as a beginner, start with something basic. The bells and whistles are great, but it's not great when you don't understand it. It's not great when you get it and you just want to sew straight seams and you've got all these other things that you don't understand. It's sort of a bit of a waste of money. So as you go along, as you grow as a beginner sewer, because I'm teaching you the fundamentals and basis off of industry standards, start basic. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so you all can see my hands while I'm working. And I'm going to, we went over last week how to drop your straight stitch foot out. Drop that out with a small lever at the back of the attachment that goes to the shank, that where your foot sits. That's what we want. So what I want to do is just want to see which side do I need to stitch down first. Yes, you need a zipper foot to sew a zipper. Yes, you need a zipper foot to sew a zipper. So I want to be on this side. I'm just going to see if I'm doing it right. I was there. And yep, I'm good. Okay. So normally what I can do, I start to take the pins out as I sew. It's perfectly fine. Okay. What you want to do is you want this part of your zipper foot to align with along the zipper tape. You don't want to be too close to the zipper teeth, because then what you'll do is you'll stabilize um, your teeth and your zipper won't open. So you want to be close to it, but not too close. Okay. So I'm going to take one of my pins out, and I'm going to lower my foot. And as you can see, the edge of my zipper foot, and I want to make sure my threads are not in the wrong place either. So I try to do the same thing I do with my straight stitch foot, make sure my threads are between that small little metal indentation and to the back of the machine. So I'm aligning this up. Don't want to cover my zipper teeth. Don't want to be too close to them. I just want the folded edge of my fabric to be where I need it to be. And I'm using my finger to keep that aligned. And I'm there. And what I want to do is I want my sample to be partly under there. Don't worry about starting at the very top. I want it to be partly under. So what I want to do is I want to start at the top and making sure my stitch length is right. Change it up a little bit last week. And I want to start slow. Okay, and back stitch forward. And what I always say is that the zipper foot does the work for you. So see how this lines up perfectly with the teeth? It does the work for you. So as I go, and as you can see, because it's pressed, it's perfectly in place. It's lining up where I need it to line up. I take my time. And do I think zippers are complex to execute? Somewhat. But once you get the hang of it, I feel like it gets easier and easier. Keeping the edge of my foot aligned with that. Take your time. No rush. And pull out my pins. Take my time. No rush. Okay. Go down. And look how the edge of my foot is just lining up like it's like ice. It's like lining up perfectly with the edge of my foot. It's not going over my teeth. It's giving me a beautiful stitch line. You guys can kind of see that a little bit. It's giving me a beautiful stitch line, which is what I need. Okay. And then what I want to do is remember how we talked about this last week. Some of you who may have tried to sew a zipper, you saw that kind of like little wonky little curve that comes out because you didn't know what to do with your pull, and your zipper foot couldn't go past that and make it straight, so it made like a weird shape. And there are now great zipper foot feet without this that allow you to just go right by the zipper, which is wonderful. But when you don't have that option, okay, what you want to do is go as close as possible. Okay, stay on line. Now sink your needle down into your sample manually. Okay, lift your foot. Okay, and then you just want to manipulate your pull, go all the way back up, and lower your foot again. Don't forget to lower your foot again. Okay, and then you just want to continue your stitch, going all the way out, all the way out and through, and back stitch a little and come out. Okay, and of course lift our foot, pull our sample out to the left. Okay, cut our threads. Make sure you give yourself a tail and a lead. Okay, I'm going to go back to our workspace, and I am here. Okay, and as you can see, beautifully executed. My stitch length is at 4. I'm right along the edge. I could be a little bit closer, but I get a little concerned when I get too close to that because I've had issues before where I've been too close to that and the zipper has not wanted to open and close. So I'd rather be about 1/8 of an inch away from there. It's perfectly fine. I want to clean it up as I work. So important, because what you don't want to do at the end of whether you're making a garment, practice makes progress. Practice those good sewing habits, good sewing techniques. Okay. And as you can see, here it is. I didn't want to stitch this down. Don't make the mistake of catching everything, because once you catch everything, you're stitching through everything. You don't want that. Okay. So I want to zip this back up. Okay. Make sure I always, through every step of zipper application, I make sure my zipper is still working, because what is the point if the zipper is not working? What I want to do is close, fold this up, just like I just make it look like it did when you pressed your seam allowance and you opened it for the first time without the zipper. As you can see, my zipper is laying perfectly underneath. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to give it just a little press, just a little bit of steam, a little press. Okay. Zippers. Someone asked me like metal or plastic. I stay away from plastic because plastic has a tendency to melt when you put the iron on it. And if part of your zipper melts and you don't notice it, it'll melt and then the zipper won't operate correctly. So I try to stick based upon industry standards, unless it's a aesthetic thing where I'm going for a certain look or design, then I may do like a fun plastic zipper for something that I'm using it for. But I try to keep my iron on a very low setting so it doesn't melt my zipper. But I prefer to use a zipper with metal teeth. So all my zippers have metal teeth. So what I want to do is this. My one side of my zipper is attached to my sample. I'm opening it up. I pressed a little. Okay. Now what I need to do is make my marking for my stitch line for my lapped portion. Okay. So I'm working on the opposite side now. I'm not working on the side that I've already attached. I'm working on the opposite side. So I've got this free, this seam allowance is free. One of my zipper tape is also free. I want to be looking at the exterior of my sample, which is the outside, not the inside. And I want to just take a few pins. So I want to keep this. I'm a pinning girl. I like to pin things just to keep them in place. And sometimes people are like, "Oh, I don't need to use pins." Okay, that's wonderful, great. I need to use pins. So I put pins in place, and I don't care how much experience I've had sewing, pattern making, from measurements, fashion illustrating. There's just certain things that are a basic that I always adhere to and stick to, because it makes more sense for me, and it makes a better it gives me a more successful outcome, a successful garment, successful illustration, successful pattern. So I just kind of pin that in place. Now what I want to do is I want to feel through, and what I'm looking for my stop, because my line that I want to draw, I want it to be above my stop. I don't want to go below my stop, because when I open a zipper, nobody wants to see that stop inside your garment. So you want to make sure you're above your stop. So of course I got my ruler, okay, and you know what? I prefer a mechanical pencil, but I have a number two pencils, and this one is pretty sharp, but I prefer a mechanical pencil for this. So what I want to do is find my stop, found it. I want to be about a quarter of an inch above my stop. And if you're not, don't feel comfortable just feeling it out, go under, measure up a quarter of an inch from your stop on the wrong side, take a straight pin. These are just little tricks of the trade that I've learned over time that have helped my students greatly with their fundamentals and basics of sewing. So insert the pin just right where you need it to be. And once I have the line, once I know where it is, I can kind of get an idea. I take it out. So see, it's not straight. That's fine. The ruler's going to do that work for me. But I want to make sure I'm on the correct side. Don't sew on the other side that you've already attached. Stay away from that. So what I want to do is I want to make a stitch line, but I need the stitch line to be able to go through not just my top layer. I need it to go through my seam allowance layer, and I need it to go through my zipper tape layer, all three layers. So starting here, I want my stitch line that I'm making that's going to be on the exterior of my garment, exterior of my sample, which is going to be visually you're going to be able to see it, and you want it to be as neat as humanly possible. So anything that's going to be on the outside of the garment, top stitching, finishings, you want them to be as neat as humanly possible. So I want to take my ruler, and I'm just going to make a really light line. And if you were doing this in an actual garment, there are so many different marking tools that you could use that can that are removable, washable, you can dust them off, tailor's chalk, tailor's wax. What I always say is test it on the scrap of fabric first. Test it on a scrap of your actual fabric you're using first to see whether or not it stains it. Because I know fabrics like silk, satin, they have a tendency to be very temperamental and they can't, some silks can't even take water where it will create a stain. So I don't want that. So I'm just giving myself a marking. Okay. And I want to make sure that my marking that goes parallel to my seam, I'm making a marking that goes across, perpendicular to my seam, and then parallel to my seam. I want to make sure that that marking is equidistant or the same distance going all the way up. I don't want it to be off or slightly crooked. So my ruler is everything. Okay, so I think I'm going to do, again, 5/8. And what I'm doing is finding the 5/8 marking on my ruler. For those of us who still struggle with ruler reading, the 5/8 marking is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares over. Okay. And I want to take that fifth square, lay the line where that fifth square is on my seam line, and start to make my marking where I need it to be, starting there. And I'm just making sure I want it to be perfectly parallel to my seam, perfectly parallel. So I'm just making a mark. And once again, what you'll also find is tailors, professional tailors will do this line in stitching, in hand stitching. I really love tailoring. I'm not as, I would say, that expertise of tailoring takes, so is so detail oriented, such a beautiful art of fashion. Tailoring, just like couture work, is a beautiful art of fashion. I admire them. A lot of work is done by hand in tailoring. um, so what tailors would do is basically use a stitch line, hand stitch this line to make sure it's accurate. So I'm just using my pencil 5/8 of an inch marking away from my seam allowance. And I want to make sure I'm not too close to my zipper. I don't want to be too close to my zipper. And what I figured out here is I'm a little bit close to my zipper. I don't want to be too close to my zipper. Let's see where I am. I'm too close to my zipper tape. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm feeling this. I feel like it's not far enough. I feel like it's not as far as I need it to be. So that's why I love making a sample. I can't stress to you all enough. Love making a sample because then I can test and see whether or not I'm where I need to be. So there. If I was to open this, I would be here. And it's going to be covered. All right, I think I'm good. All right, so I'm 5/8 of an inch away from, and see how, like, even here I can see here where my zipper pull is. It made my line go out a little bit. So what I want to do is keep your zipper pull up. I'm gonna manipulate this and push it down a little so I can get a little bit straighter on top. Little tricks that you learn after a while. So see, it may not be noticeable to you, but it's noticeable to me. So everything is parallel going all the way up. And then when I get here, this kind of bows out a little bit. That's because that's where my zipper pull was sitting and I couldn't get my ruler right on that line. So I just want to go back and redo that. And see, even when I lay my ruler on the 5/8 marking and my 5/8 marking is on that seam, see how it comes in just a little bit like that. And I make sure, I feel like I might be a little bit too close to my zipper teeth. So I'm looking at that, I'm examining that. I want to make sure I'm not. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, okay, practice makes progress. I'm going to go a little bit further out just to be on the safe side. Because I want to catch my zipper tape, but I don't want to be too close to my zipper teeth. And I feel like the line that I'm drawing is way too close to my zipper teeth. So what I want to do is I'm going to go out a little bit more. And that's why I love having an eraser. So I'm going to smudge out this line, keep that line where it is, keep my perpendicular line where it is, and just erase out my original line because I want to be a little bit further out. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, okay? Don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's fine. So here, And because I feel like I'm not far enough away from my teeth, and I don't want to be close to my teeth. I want to be on my tape, but away from my teeth. So just kind of erase that out. I'm going to go further out. I'm going to go further out. And I'm going to just take my iron, just put that a little steam. Okay. I'm going to go further out with my ruler. I tried 5/8. I don't feel like 5/8 is far enough. I'm going to go 3/4. Okay. I'm going to 3/4 marking. So I'm using that same line that I used here, keeping that, letting that reference stay put, lining up my 3/4 of an inch marking on that line and here. And that's why I love making samples before I actually do it in a garment, because I can make the mistakes, correct them, and then I don't make that mistake in my actual garment. So it's a mistake that I avoid in my actual final garment, which I absolutely love. Okay. So pull this up so I can get close. And keep your pins in place. You just want to keep those pins there until you're ready to sew. 3/4 on here. And 3/4 on there. And don't forget, 3/4 is 2, 4, 6 squares in on your ruler. That is your 3/4 of an inch marking. I want to manipulate my zipper again, pull it down. Okay, and make my 3/4 marking where it belongs. There. All the way out. Okay. Now I want to examine it. Okay, that's better. That's where I need it to be. And just pull this back up, zip it back up. Okay. Now I'm ready to go over to where my machine is, and I'm ready to create this stitch line here. Remember, we're 1/4 of an inch above our stop, okay, our zipper stop. We're 3/4 of an inch out from our seam line over, okay. Now let's go to our machine. Okay, our zipper foot is in place, ready to go. And remember we talked about this. Okay, so remember the zipper pull, we gotta manipulate the zipper pull, get it out of the way so we can make it nice and straight on top. And we have no type of distortion. Okay, and I want to insert my sample, and I want to be, I don't know if I want to be on this side or the other side. Let's be on this side. So I'm going to drop my foot, switch sides. Okay. And take this out. I want this to stay in place. So I'm going to just run the pin along the top, right close to where I'm supposed to be starting. And make sure my threads are all going to the back of the machine. And I'm going to be on this side. There. And when I lower my foot, I'm going to pull this pin and drop it back on my magnetic pin cushion. And I want to go in a little bit more and be right there. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll lower my needle just to kind of see where it is, okay, and kind of see where this is lining up. Like it's there. And I want to start. And okay, so I can feel underneath my pull is starting to get in the way again. I want to lower my needle, lift my foot, get my pull to go back up. manipulate my pull. Let me take it down again. This is the tough part about zippers. That's why I prefer the other foot. I'll keep that down until I get down a little further. Go down. I want these threads to be under. Take your time, okay? So I got threads got in the way. And I'm gonna sink my needle again, lift my foot, and I'm gonna once again get my pull out of the way, all the way up. And pushing it all the way down and all the way up. It prefers to go down, and I want to just make sure this pin is not in the way. The zipper is such a precarious thing. It's not my favorite thing to do when I'm doing a garment, but when it's done, it does look amazing. Okay, lower my foot, and I just want to take my time, continue down. Okay. And then what I want to do is take your pins out as you go along. Take your pins out. You don't need them. Take them out. Keep your sample nice and flat. Okay. All the way out. And take your pin out. We don't need that one again. And then what I want to do, just like last week, remember last week when we did this? Okay, as you get to the corner of your sample, okay, as you get to the corner, you're going to lower your stitch length to something small, okay, and you're going to just slowly and manually, right, control your machine, don't go too fast. You're going to slowly go all the way to the corner of your sample. And I'm going down, down, and I just want to hit the corner with my needle. And I'm there, okay? Sink your needle in, lift your foot, pivot your sample, okay? And now we're going across, okay? Now we're going across. So I lower my foot. I want to make sure this is straight. My fabric's not bunched up. There, lower my foot, and I want to go straight across. And I don't want to, yes, you are going to go through the zipper teeth, just slightly. Just take your time. And where you want to land is you want to land right in the seam. And then you want to just back stitch a little. Just a little. Okay. And then you want to lift your foot, take your sample out, okay? Of course, cut your threads so that it's not too long, okay? There. And then I want to go back to my workstation and I want to clean this up. Okay, I have one imperfection that for me, I would go back and fix. I have one stitch that is sitting up and I would actually go back and fix that stitch. So I want to clean up my sample, cut all your loose threads off, okay? And then what I want to do is I want to press it, Okay, you see that one little, it drives me crazy. That's just part of my learning difference. Like things like that, that small thread that's sticking up, that would get on my nerves after a while, and I'm definitely gonna go back and fix that. Okay, so then what I want to do is this. Here's my the part that I am excited about. So hold on for 1 second. Let me just grab my seam ripper. I've got two workspaces working from one side of my home and the other one working on a major project right now. So everything's kind of all over the place. And it's the holidays. So last but not least, what I want to do is I want to seam rip open my sample. Okay. Seam rip open my seam where I initially sewed. Okay. My first seam. So remember the seam we made? I want to seam rip that open. Yes, it sounds crazy. So I want to seam rip that open like so. Take your time, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to rip your fabric. Okay, you don't want to rip your fabric. So seam rip little by little. Here. Okay, and just take your time. And as you seam rip, the best way, sometimes I'll get questions about seam ripping. I usually try to seam rip up and away from my sample, because what can happen is this: if I seam rip in, sometimes this is sharp enough to dig into my sample and rip it. So I don't want that. So I seam rip and I pull my stitches apart, kind of get my seam ripper in there and pull just lightly. I don't rip into it, but I just kind of pull it away lightly so I can catch the next stitch and seam rip. Keep going, almost there. Here, and seam rip, keep going there. Okay. The seam ripper, like I said, just be careful with it. Of course, your hands, and then of course your sample. So I'm all the way there, down to where if you don't back stitch here and secure that, you can seam rip past that. So what I want to do is, of course, clean out these threads. I want these threads to go away. Okay. I'm a strong believer. A lot of times I'll even have a lint roller and I'll kind of like lint roll. And the good thing about the lint roller, it catches all of those loose stitches and pulls them out for me. So that is a little trick that I learned, that works really, really well. Then I want to, anything I see that's kind of like sticking out, hanging out, carefully cut, because sometimes what we can do as beginners, we can get anxious or get excited about something and it accidentally cut something that shouldn't have been cut. Okay. And I want to give this one last press. And of course, I want to go back and fix that one little imperfection. Okay. Now, why is it called a lap zipper? Because it overlaps the zipper and hides it. Okay. So that's to understand that it overlaps the zipper and hides it. So here you go. Unzip. Okay. You got to make sure it functions. If it doesn't function, it's what's it there for? Okay. So as you can see, when I do this, and I'll show you the difference between the two. So here's our centered zipper application, which we did last week. Here's our lap zipper application. See the difference? Like, this is hiding my zipper. Okay. This is why, like, when you see it on a skirt, this part faces the back, and then you see the person put their hand in, unzip it, and zip it up, and it hides the zipper completely. So it just gives you just a beautiful stitch line that basically overlaps, and hides the zipper. This, of course, is the basic fundamental of, zipper application, our center zipper application, which we did last week. Okay. So once again, and don't forget, you all, these can be applied to anything, not just the garment, home decor, um, accessories, bags, shoes. Sometimes people use zippers as a decorative thing for design aesthetic. So you want to make sure that you're understanding what each zipper is used for, what you can use it in. Experiment too, because sometimes we have these techniques or fundamentals that we've assigned that are kind of like what I call old school thinking. And we look at zippers as just a functional thing when a zipper really can be part of your aesthetic or part of your design to make something look more interesting. I know I love details. That's what attracts me to a garment, whether they're zippers, the various pockets, welt, patch, a pocket with a flap, snaps, a variety of different embellishments. That's what attracts me to a certain piece or a certain garment. So here we are, the fundamentals and basics of closures, of fastenings. We have our two zipper applications. The week before we did snaps, center zipper application, lap zipper application. Once again, we are Royal Fulani Living Sew School. I am your sew guide, Nina, here with you each week, sharing with you my 20 plus years experience as a fashion educator and 30 plus years as a fashion designer to bring you the fundamentals and basics of fashion, to take the fear out of beginner sewing, and the fear out of just beginning as a creative in fashion and beginning as a creative in sewing, fashion illustrating, pattern making. We're going to do it all. I'm going to teach you guys everything I know, and of course, all based upon industry standards. So no gluing, no taping. Those are things that are not necessarily bad things. We can use those techniques, but as far as the fundamentals of sewing, they're consistent and they don't change depending on what category you're working in, whether it's children's wear, women's wear, accessories. Your fundamentals and the foundation and basics of sewing do not change depending on what category you're in. So once again, we will be here each week. Again, if you have questions about a specific individual thing you're trying to learn as a basic sewer, please, please, please DM me, message me, drop it in the comments. We are here for Sewing Shortcut Saturday or Sunday. We've been doing Sundays for however long. I really love doing this every Sunday. You can catch us live or you can catch us on a replay, whichever one you decide. I know we have very busy lives, but once again, and those of you, also encourage you, those of you who are doing like fun things for the holidays and you need some new sewing techniques, we're here. We cater to building a community and the confidence of the neurodiverse, newbie, and non-sewer, one creative at a time. Those of us who learn differently, those of us with learning differences, diagnosed and undiagnosed, we are using the chunking method to bring you the fundamentals and basics of beginner sewing. And I just love what I'm doing, and I love that I'm here every Sunday with you all to share my experiences and my expertise with you. So once again, we are on every social media platform: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, Pinterest, you know, name it, whichever one you prefer, we are there. We have our pre-recorded tutorials on our YouTube channel. We have our static posts, carousel posts, which are step-by-step instructions and images and words for those of us who learn that way. And of course, we are here live every weekend to show you one basic technique and fundamental for a beginner sewer. Hope to see you all soon. Be great, fellow creatives. I will see you next week, and take care. Bye-bye.